In the summer of 1304, beneath the towering volcanic cliffs of Stirling Castle in Scotland, a terrified garrison waved a white flag of surrender. For 3 brutal months, 30 Scottish defenders had held the fortress against the entire English royal army. Now, starving and outmatched, they opened the castle gates, pleading for the mercy of King Edward I. The king looked at the surrendering soldiers and gave a shocking, chilling command. He ordered them back inside. Edward refused their surrender, not because he wanted to prolong the war, but because of what was standing behind his siege lines. For 90 days, 50 master carpenters had worked around the clock to construct the most monstrous mechanical siege engine in human history, the Warwolf. Towering over 300 feet into the Scottish sky, powered by 30,000 pounds of stripped church lead, this colossal counterweight trebuchet was capable of hurling 300-pound boulders to shatter solid curtain walls from 200 paces away. King Edward had spent a fortune of the royal treasury building his mechanical titan, and he had no intention of marching home without watching it fire. This is the true story of Warwolf, the siege monster that terrified Scotland, and the day a king refused peace just to watch stone turn to dust. To understand the absolute obsession of King Edward I, you have to understand the ancient medieval proverb, "He who holds Stirling, holds Scotland." Perched high atop an ancient volcanic crag known as Castle Hill, Stirling Castle was the undisputed strategic gateway of the north. Rising hundreds of feet above the River Forth, it controlled the only passage between the Scottish lowlands and the Highlands. On 3 sides, the fortress was protected by sheer, vertical cliffs of black basalt rock. An invading army could not dig tunnels beneath its foundations, nor could they scale its cliffs with ladders. The only possible approach was a steep, heavily fortified ridge guarded by colossal curtain walls and iron-reinforced gatehouses. By the spring of 1304, after 8 brutal years of the Wars of Scottish Independence, King Edward I, known to history as Longshanks and the Hammer of the Scots, had conquered nearly every corner of Scotland. Scottish nobles had submitted. William Wallace was in hiding. Only one fortress still flew the lion-rampant banner of Scottish independence, Stirling Castle. Inside the fortress stood a tiny, stubborn garrison of barely 30 men, led by a fierce knight named Sir William Oliphant. When King Edward demanded their immediate surrender, Oliphant delivered a stunning refusal, declaring that he held the castle for the exiled Scottish king and would defend it to the last breath. Enraged that 30 men were defying the might of England, Edward brought the full weight of his empire to bear. In April 1304, the English army surrounded the volcanic rock with an unprecedented arsenal of artillery. Edward deployed 13 massive conventional siege engines, trebuchets and catapults that had conquered castles across France and Wales, bearing colorful names like the Vicar, the Parson, and the Robinet. For 3 grueling months, these engines hurled thousands of lead stones, flaming jars of Greek fire, and heavy rocks against the battlements day and night. Yet the castle refused to fall. The sheer volcanic basalt and thick limestone masonry absorbed the continuous bombardment. Even worse, the Scottish defenders fired back with deadly precision. During one inspection, a Scottish crossbow bolt slammed into King Edward's breastplate, while another killed his horse beneath him, nearly ending the king's life on the spot. For Edward, it was a humiliating stalemate. The most powerful monarch in Western Europe, accompanied by his entire royal court, was being held at bay by a handful of starving men on a rock. Edward realized that conventional medieval warfare had reached its absolute limit. He didn't just need to breach the walls of Stirling. He needed to crush the psychological spirit of the Scottish nation once and for all. He summoned his master military engineer, James of St. George, and gave a chilling command. Forget the standard blueprints. Strip every lead roof in the region and build a monster. To build his mechanical titan, King Edward summoned the most brilliant military architect of the medieval era, Master James of St. George. James was the mastermind behind the legendary Iron Ring of colossal stone castles in Wales, monuments like Caernarvon and Conwy. But now, the king did not want a fortress built. He wanted a fortress killer. In the royal payrolls, the secret project was codenamed in Anglo-Norman French, Loup de Guerre, the Warwolf. The scale of the construction was unlike anything Europe had ever witnessed. Starting in late April 1304, 50 master carpenters and hundreds of laborers worked day and night in the shadow of Stirling Castle. They felled entire ancient oak forests near Dunblane to construct the massive wooden frame. 30 heavy transport wagons were required just to haul the timber beams, iron winches, and forged chains to the siege lines. For nearly 3 months, the machine grew higher and higher, wrapped in layers of scaffolding and protective animal hides to shield it from Scottish fire arrows. And to power this beast, Edward unleashed a ruthless industrial requisition. A counterweight trebuchet works on pure gravitational leverage. To launch a massive boulder, the counterweight box must be impossibly heavy. When local stone proved insufficient, King Edward issued a royal decree stripping the heavy lead roofs from nearby churches and cathedrals, including the great refectory of St. Andrew's Cathedral. Over 30,000 pounds, nearly 15 tons, of melted church lead, iron bars, and crushed stone were packed into the giant wooden counterweight box. The resulting machine was an engineering marvel. When fully assembled, Warwolf stood over 300 feet tall, towering over the surrounding landscape like a wooden skyscraper, dwarfing every castle wall in Scotland. Its massive throwing arm, carved from a colossal tapered oak beam, was operated by dual man-powered treadwheels. Dozens of soldiers walked inside giant revolving wooden wheels like human gears, slowly winching the colossal throwing arm downward against 15 tons of suspended lead counterweight. The ammunition was purpose-built for total destruction, perfectly carved granite spheres weighing 300 pounds, the weight of 2 grown men. According to modern physics calculations, when the release pin was pulled, the 15-ton counterweight dropped in free fall, snapping the long arm upward with violent centrifugal acceleration, launching a 300-pound boulder across 200 yards with enough kinetic energy to crack solid basalt cliffs. By mid-July 1304, the scaffolding finally came down. High atop Stirling Castle, the 30 Scottish defenders looked out over the parapets, and their blood ran cold. Rising above the English siege camp stood a mechanical monster, taller than their own fortress towers. The sheer, terrifying scale of Warwolf shattered their will in an instant. Sir William Oliphant realized that no masonry on Earth could survive this engine. On July 20th, before Warwolf even loaded its first boulder, the Scottish garrison lowered their lion rampant banner and opened the castle gates, offering unconditional surrender to save their lives. Across the field, King Edward looked upon the white flag of surrender, and then the king gave an answer that shocked even his own royal court. When the white flag of surrender fluttered above Stirling Castle on July 20th, 1304, King Edward I did the unthinkable. He looked at the Scottish emissaries and replied with chilling arrogance, "You shall not enter into my grace. Return to the castle and defend yourselves as best you can, for you shall endure what is prepared for you." Edward literally forced the 30 starving Scottish defenders back inside their own fortress. He had spent 3 months, thousands of pounds of silver, and stripped entire church roofs to build the largest siege engine on Earth. He was not about to pack it away without seeing what it could do. To Edward, the siege was no longer a military necessity. It was a royal spectacle. The king ordered his carpenters to build a grand wooden viewing pavilion outside the siege lines, complete with high-backed chairs and canvas awnings. He invited his young wife, Queen Margaret, along with the noble ladies and courtiers of England, to sit in safety and watch the demonstration of imperial power as if attending a tournament. On the morning of the test, the English siege lines fell into complete, breathless silence. Soldiers inside the massive wooden treadwheels stepped out. Engineers hammered loose the heavy iron locking pins. With a deafening roar that shook the earth, The 15-ton lead counterweight plunged in freefall. The colossal 300-foot oak arm whipped upward with violent, terrifying acceleration. At the apex of the arc, the leather sling snapped open, launching a 300-pound granite boulder into the Scottish sky. The projectile traveled across the valley with the roar of a falling meteor. When the boulder struck the curtain wall of Stirling Castle, the destruction was absolute. The ancient limestone masonry, which had resisted 13 catapults for months, shattered like brittle glass on impact. A single blow obliterated an entire section of the curtain wall, collapsing stone parapets into an avalanche of rubble and rising clouds of white mortar dust. Subsequent shots hurled massive boulders straight through the castle towers, smashing through roofs and foundations with catastrophic kinetic energy. Inside the fortress, the 30 Scottish defenders huddled in subterranean cellars, praying for the bombardment to stop. The terrifying physics of Warwolf had turned their impenetrable volcanic rock into a collapsing tomb. Having thoroughly enjoyed his royal demonstration, King Edward finally ordered the firing to cease. On July 24th, the castle gates opened for the last time. Sir William Oliphant and his surviving men marched out barefoot, wearing nooses around their necks, falling to their knees in the dirt before the king. Satisfied that his mechanical titan had proven his absolute supremacy, Edward spared their lives, sending them as prisoners to the Tower of London. Warwolf had triumphed. It had achieved the absolute pinnacle of classical mechanical engineering. Yet, at the very moment of its greatest victory, the giant wooden monster was standing at the edge of extinction, because hidden in the alchemy workshops of Europe, a new black powder was about to render every wooden siege engine obsolete forever. The Siege of Stirling Castle in 1304 was more than just a royal victory. It was the grand finale of an entire era of human engineering. The Warwolf stood as the absolute pinnacle of mechanical counterweight artillery. It pushed the physics of timber, iron, lead, and gravity to their absolute limits. Never again in human history would an army spend 3 months harvesting entire forests to build a wooden machine of that scale. Within a single generation, the giant wooden trebuchet was made permanently obsolete. Across Europe, military engineers discovered that a few pounds of black powder packed into a cast bronze tube could deliver the same destructive kinetic energy as a 15-ton lead counterweight, requiring a fraction of the labor and transport. The wooden giants that had dominated ancient and medieval sieges for millennia quietly dissolved into historical memory. Yet, the story of Warwolf leaves us with a deeper, enduring truth about the nature of power. King Edward I built a 300-foot titan to crush 30 starving men on a volcanic rock. He proved that imperial wealth could shatter stone walls and force a garrison to its knees. Yet, less than 10 years later, in 1314, near the very same fields of Stirling, Robert the Bruce led the Scots to a decisive victory at the Battle of Bannockburn, driving the English out of Scotland. Edward could build the largest siege engine on Earth, but he could not engineer a weapon powerful enough to crush the human spirit of resistance. Today, as we construct our own multi-billion-dollar military systems and marvel at technological overkill, we are left with Warwolf's timeless question: what colossal machines are we building right now that tomorrow's discoveries will render completely forgotten? If you enjoyed this deep dive into medieval megaweapons, make sure to like the video and subscribe to How Come for more cinematic documentary investigations. Until next time, stay curious,